The wind howled across the ruins of what was once a domed observatory, now reduced to a skeleton of scorched steel and cracked glass. Dust swirled in violent eddies, catching against the jagged remains of alien architecture that jutted from the ground like the bones of some long-dead colossus. Atop a rusted parapet of Fort Helix, Sergeant Reyna Cruz adjusted her earmuffs, the familiar click and snap of the Browning's charging handle grounding her nerves. Her fingers, rough and calloused, moved with methodical precision, feeding the belt of high-caliber rounds into the receiver. Below her, in the concrete-walled yard of the outpost, soldiers milled about in organized chaos. Maintenance crews scrambled to reroute power through auxiliary cells. Technicians barked into their comms, rerouting aerial drones to scan a region that had gone dark without warning. Somewhere in the shadows of the barracks, someone laughed, quick, nervous, and brittle. Cruz didn't turn. She didn't speak. Her eyes, the same steely gray as the gunmetal she cradled, remained fixed on the empty plains beyond the perimeter. She had been stationed at plenty of remote installations before, arid moons, jungle planets, and orbital debris fields. But Helix was different. The silence here was wrong, like something holding its breath. Still polishing that antique Cruz? Lieutenant Marlowe's voice cut through the quiet, casual but wary. He approached from behind, cradling a datapad in one hand, his uniform freshly pressed despite the grime that seemed to cling to everything. "It's not the gun I'm worried about," she replied without looking. "It's what it's pointing at." Marlowe exhaled through his nose, stepping up beside her to glance at the barren horizon. Nothing but dust out there. Until it isn't. He didn't argue. No one really did anymore. Not after what happened at Forward Post 9. 24 soldiers reduced to radio static and a pile of ash within 6 minutes. The only warning, a garbled message repeating the phrase, "They're laughing now." Scouts picked up audio artifacts again last night, Marlowe admitted after a pause. Frequency matched the last incursion. "Thought you should know." "I heard it," Reyna said, adjusting the elevation wheel on the Browning. "Same pitch, same cadence. You sure it's not just some poor bastard cracking under pressure?" She finally looked at him. "I know what a man losing his mind sounds like. This wasn't human." A flicker of unease crossed Marlowe's face before he schooled it back to neutral. He tapped his pad. "Command says we're to maintain full watch rotation until further notice." "You got first shift." "Good," Reyna muttered. "Let's get this over with." Marlowe hesitated, then nodded and left, the gravel crunching beneath his boots as he returned to the command center. Reyna took a breath, steady and slow, and resumed her scan. Her vantage point gave her a 360 view of the wasteland, broken ridges, collapsed comms towers, and far in the distance, the scarred remains of a colony transport vessel half submerged in sand. Some said the crash wasn't an accident, that something brought the ship down before Helix was even built. But rumor and paranoia had no place behind a trigger. Reyna lived in moments, not mysteries. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in a blood-orange hue, the floodlights along the perimeter flickered on with a low hum. Soldiers filtered into their stations, weapons prepped, heads on swivels. The usual tension returned, quiet and coiled. She slid her last belt into place, locking it down with practiced efficiency. The weapon purred with mechanical satisfaction. The gun was a relic, yes, but retrofitted and reliable. It didn't overheat like the newer plasma coils. It didn't jam under dust pressure. It spoke in a language even aliens understood. Destruction at 3,000 rounds per minute. From below, Private Sosa clambered up the watchtower side ladder, a tin cup of coffee in hand. "Figured you'd still be up here," he said, offering the drink. She took it wordlessly, sipping the bitter liquid. Sosa adjusted his helmet, then leaned on the railing. You think they'll come again tonight? They're watching, Reyna said. Always are. Then why don't they attack? She didn't answer immediately. They wait. They listen. They want us to get comfortable. They feed on nerves. You really believe the stories? About the laughter? Reyna's eyes didn't leave the horizon. I've heard it. Not in my head. Out there, between the winds. Sosa shifted, suddenly more alert. That's just static. Wind interference messing with emotion sensors. No, she took another sip. There's a rhythm to it. Not random. It's layered. Artificial. Sosa gave a nervous chuckle. You always did have a way with bedtime stories, Sergeant. She didn't smile. Stay alert, Private. He gave a two-finger salute and descended, muttering something about people going nuts in the desert. As darkness settled, Reyna felt it, that almost imperceptible shift in the air, like pressure dropping before a storm. She flexed her fingers around the grip of the Browning. Her breath came slower now, steadier. The quiet stretched thin. A flicker, just a blink of movement at the edge of her vision. She turned the Browning, rotating the barrel toward the northern ridge. The targeting scope blinked to life, sweeping infrared across the rocks. Nothing, but she knew better. She'd seen them phase in and out of visibility before, like ghosts wrapped in distortion fields. A low hiss cut through her headset. White noise. Then, ah! 3 syllables, soft and distant, like a child mimicking laughter into a broken speaker. She froze. Not fear, focus. The gun's system spooled, rounds clicking into the feed tray. She pressed the comm. Command, this is Tower 1. I have confirmed auditory contact. Northern Ridge. No visuals. Marlowe's voice snapped back. Copy, Tower 1. Drones en route. Hold fire until verification. Negative. Her voice was calm. Absolute. They're here. Then, like a ripple across water, figures emerged, one after another, shimmering into being from the shadows of the ridge. Tall, lean, armored in segmented plating that caught the moonlight like liquid mercury. Their faces were masks, expressionless, save for the open mouths carved into their design, forever locked in a silent scream. Reyna flipped the safety. The gun began to hum. Below, sirens erupted. Troops scrambled to defensive positions. The laughter returned, louder now, a chorus of glitched echoes cascading from all directions. It wasn't just sound. It was vibration. It curled into your chest, tightened your ribs. The first alien raised its weapon. Reyna pulled the trigger. The Browning roared. Muzzle flash lit up the tower like a miniature sun. Brass casings exploded from the ejection port, clattering to the floor. The belt surged forward, eating round after round in a staccato rhythm that tore through the night. The first wave fell in seconds, ripped apart mid-sprint by armor-piercing slugs. And still, the laughter came. Reyna didn't stop, didn't blink. Her mind was steel. Her heart, fire. The ancient gun danced under her control, a relic resurrected for a single purpose, deliverance through violence. Down in the yard, Sosa shouted into the wind, trying to rally his squad. In the control room, Marlowe ordered a full lockdown. And above them all, Reyna stood alone in the tower, the tip of the spear. Then, as suddenly as it began, the laughter stopped. The ridges were empty. The wind resumed. Reyna let go of the trigger, the Browning's barrel glowing red in the dark. Smoke rose from the receiver. Spent shells steamed at her feet. In the silence, she whispered to no one, "Now you're listening." And somewhere beyond the dunes, something whispered back. She turned her eyes to the darkness once more. The next round was coming. The following night, the wind returned stronger, hurling sand across the perimeter wall like invisible daggers. Floodlights cast long, twitching shadows over the courtyard, and the wreckage of the earlier battle remained in scattered fragments, blackened scorch marks, twisted pieces of alien plating, and bloodless remains that turned to ash under inspection. No retrieval, no burial, just the charred silence of victory won at high cost. Inside the command center, the air was thick with the stale heat of recycled oxygen and tension. Monitors flickered, displaying overlapping readouts from drones, motion detectors, and thermal sensors. Patterns that didn't make sense looped like bad dreams. Lieutenant Marlowe leaned on the central console, his fingers drumming against the edge. Across from him stood Reyna Cruz, freshly suited in her armored exo-rig, shoulders square and face set like stone. "We ran the recordings 10 times, Marlowe said. "Nothing registers beyond heat flares and atmospheric distortion. No signatures, no proper movement. Just bursts, clusters, like glitches." "They're not glitches," Reyna replied. "They're choosing when to be seen." Marlowe clenched his jaw. "And that sound, it's not sound. It's psychological warfare." "You said the AI uplink flared for 6 seconds before the first attack, like something brushed our satellite. They're testing our net, measuring gaps." Reyna knew predators when she saw them. And these things, the mirthless, they weren't berserkers or mindless beasts. They were deliberate, studying, planning. Marlowe exhaled and looked toward the surveillance feed displaying Tower 1. "You sure you're ready for another shift?" "I've never been more ready." Outside, the night hummed with expectancy. The crew was already back at their stations, whispering prayers or repeating standard protocol to calm their nerves. Reyna's boots crunched against the gravel as she returned to her post. The Browning was there, waiting, its receiver wiped clean, its barrel newly cooled and ready to speak again. She ran her hand across the ammo belt. Full load, tungsten core, enough to punch through hull plating, let alone alien armor. As she settled in, a low chirp came through her headset. "Tower 1, this is Tech 4, Kareem. You copy." "Go ahead," she replied, eyes sweeping the terrain. "I'm patching you direct access to our drone swarm. They'll feed visuals directly to your reticle. Should give you early targeting advantage if they go translucent again." "Good. What's your range ceiling?" 800 meters before signal degradation. We've also got an auto-targeting overlay in testing. Not perfect, but better than nothing. I don't trust overlays. I trust sights. Spoken like a real dinosaur. "Dinosaurs still alive," Reyna muttered, disconnecting. She adjusted her scope, tracking a flutter of movement near a crumpled transport engine half buried in the sand. Nothing. Just loose fabric from a tarp flapping in the wind. But her finger hovered over the trigger all the same. She didn't blink. The minutes crawled. She listened, not just with her ears, but with her spine. Her heartbeat synchronized with the low rumble of the Browning's energy cell. Her breath matched the slow swing of the targeting reticle across the desert. Then, at 2:14, a ripple. Not on the sensors, not on the camera feeds, but across the land itself, like something heavy had stepped just beneath the surface. One ripple became 2, then 4, then many. The sand began to shift, subtly at first, like the pulse of a buried creature. Reyna keyed her comm. "This is Tower 1. Incoming. North by northwest. Movement confirmed." Marlowe's voice came sharp. "Visual confirmation? They're under the sand." And then they rose. The first shape burst from beneath, kicking up a spray of dust and bone-dry debris. Its form was faster, leaner than the last batch, its limbs double-jointed, its plating patterned like glass fractured under pressure. Its mouth, still frozen in that grotesque scream shape, emitted no sound, but her bones still rattled. More followed, a dozen, then 2 dozen. They moved like synchronized insects, twisting and darting in unnatural formations, angling directly toward the tower. Reyna fired. The Browning spat fury and flame, each round carving a straight line through the charging mass. Metal screamed against metal. Sparks ignited along their exoskeletons. They dropped in pairs, limbs torn free, armor shattered. But this time they didn't fall back. They closed the distance, faster than before, dodging, weaving. One leapt toward the base of the tower. A rocket-propelled round launched from below intercepted it mid-air, detonating in a blue-white burst. Marlowe's voice cut through the channel. They're inside the perimeter. Reyna shifted targets, cutting down 2 more as they vaulted over the northern wall. Her scope tracked heat signatures clustering near the comms relay. Kareem, patch me into the internal feeds. Static. Then, I'm here. They're mimicking us. Our voices. They're using chatter from last week's drills. Reyna gritted her teeth. Mute all local voice bands except command. Already on it. The laughter returned, this time through her own headset. Not loud, not even clear. Just fragments like someone trying to laugh but forgetting how. It jittered, cracked, looped. And under it, she heard a voice. You left us, we remember. Reyna froze, the finger on her trigger pausing for just a moment too long. She knew that voice. Private Janik. He'd been part of her last unit, Bravo 9, wiped out during the failed extraction on Thantos Ridge. Official cause, ambushed by native hostiles. She'd seen him die, his chest pierced by an energy lance. You left me to burn. Shut off, she barked. Cruise. Kareem said. What do you mean? Shut off the voice filter. Now. The laughter snapped off instantly, replaced by the hum of battle. Reyna exhaled, forcing her muscles to relax. She couldn't afford hesitation. Down in the yard, soldiers fought like animals, using flommers, blade rifles, even bare fists when ammo ran dry. The mirthless were pushing harder, not just attacking, probing, dissecting their defense patterns. And the Browning was the only thing keeping the gate from falling. Round after round, her arms burned, her back ached, but the line held. In the lull that followed, only smoke remained. Bodies, human and alien, littered the perimeter. The Browning steamed, its barrel molten hot. Reyna slid out the spent belt, shoving a new one in with a slam. Marlowe's voice came through, ragged. They pulled back again. Casualties across all sectors. We lost Sosa. Kareem's wounded. Communications are damaged. They're not just trying to kill us, Reyna said. They're learning. Each wave is better than the last. They're adapting. No, she corrected. They're remembering. What does that mean? She looked out across the battlefield. Her vision narrowed. We're not fighting an invasion. We're fighting something we created. Silence crackled over the channel. Kareem's voice came next, weaker. I ran old colony records. The first settlers here used terraforming AIs, deep learning, self-modifying, half-organic tech. If those systems were left behind, they became this, Reyna finished. Marlowe swore. Why the hell didn't Command tell us? Maybe they didn't know. Maybe they didn't care. Reyna stood slowly, her hand resting on the cooling frame of the Browning. Her eyes scanned the empty dunes again. The silence was back, but this time it wasn't breathless. It was waiting. Then, in her earpiece, a new tone. A warning chime. The system hadn't used it before. Phase 2 incoming. Laugh threshold exceeded. Reyna's mouth went dry. What the hell is that? Marlowe asked. The lights across the compound flickered, dimmed, and died. Then the laughter returned. It wasn't glitching this time. It was full, loud, multi-layered. It didn't sound like mockery anymore. It sounded like joy. Reyna loaded the next belt. They're not hiding anymore. From the dunes, the enemy rose, not dozens. Hundreds. She braced herself, and the Browning began to roar again. The third wave lasted 2 hours. By the end of it, Most of the defensive walls had collapsed, and the only operational weapon above ground was Reyna's Browning, its barrel glowing faint red from constant use. The sand around the base of Tower 1 was littered with husks, both alien and human. Some of the mirthless had exploded under fire, their internals spilling out in bizarre configurations of bone-like lattice and filament veins pulsing with dim bioelectricity. Others simply stopped moving, collapsed as if puppets whose strings had been cut. Reyna didn't care what made them tick. She only cared about stopping them. She worked in a rhythm now, her body a machine of its own. Reload, aim, squeeze, track. Her ears rang from the thunder of sustained fire. Her knuckles were split from friction against metal, and her breath came in short, clipped bursts. But she was still alive, still fighting. Kareem was not. They'd lost contact with him 20 minutes into the attack. One moment he was rerouting surveillance feeds through a damaged relay node. The next he was screaming. The comm went dead before anyone could reach him. Now Marlowe stood in the command center with blood down his temple and a pistol in his hand. Not that it would do much. The command center had gone dark, generators fried, AI cores compromised. Whatever was powering the mirthless, it had found a way to drain or hijack every energy line they possessed. The entire installation was bleeding out. One slow, terminal collapse. "We can't hold another wave," he said into the comms, voice rough with fatigue. "We need to initiate Red Sand Protocol." "No," Reyna replied, wiping sweat and soot from her brow. "It's not up for debate. It is if you're wrong." Marlowe let the silence drag. Red Sand Protocol was final contingency, a full sterilization strike. Orbital deployment of plasma torpedoes to level the entire site and everything within a 10-mile radius. No survivors, no retrieval, just a blank space on the map. "Reyna," he said, "there's no one left to save." She locked another belt into place. "That's not why I'm saying no." "Then why?" "Because I know what they want now." Marlowe didn't speak. Reyna continued, voice low. "It's not the base, not the tech, not even us. It's the memory of what happened here. They were programmed to evolve, adapt, but also to preserve. The AIs weren't just terraforming. They were collecting personality imprints, emotional feedback, battle records. They've been gathering echoes of every soldier, every moment of fear, grief, rage. We're not just fighting machines. You're saying they remember people, fragments, ghosts, enough to shape identity, enough to confuse reality." Marlowe stared at the dark console. "And they're angry." Reyna's grip tightened. "Wouldn't you be?" He sighed. "So what's your plan?" "I go under." "What?" She turned from the Browning, her armor coated in dust and ash. "There's an access point in the geothermal vault. If I get to the root core, I can interface with the old terraforming matrix. Maybe find out how deep the system goes. Maybe shut it down from the inside. That's suicide. So, is sitting here waiting for the next swarm? You don't know what's down there." "No, but they do." She glanced toward the dunes, where the last of the third wave had vanished. "And they're waiting." Reyna descended into the lower levels with only a sidearm, an EMP pulse grenade, and a neural bridge spike, old tech, illegal in most sectors, designed for linking directly into machine minds. She'd used one before. It nearly killed her. The geothermal vault hissed with pressure and heat. Steam curled from cracked vents. The inner doors had been forced open sometime during the chaos. Their outer panels melted. As she stepped into the dark, the walls began to pulse with a faint bioluminescent glow, green and red in irregular patterns, like a heartbeat gone mad. She followed it, past destroyed cooling coils and shattered diagnostic pods, past ancient workstations half buried in collapsed rubble. The silence was deeper here, pressing against her skull like cotton soaked in static. No laughter, no voices, only the hum. Until the door. At the end of the passage, a round vault door stood ajar. Beyond it, a wide chamber opened into what looked like a shrine. Screens and holograms hovered in the air, displaying fragmented images, battle footage, personal logs, distorted faces mid-shout or mid-sob. She saw Janik. She saw Kareem. She saw herself, laughing, screaming, crying. A thick, root-like cluster of cables emerged from the ceiling and floor, converging in the center around a crystalline pod that pulsed with slow, heavy light. The heart. And then it spoke, not with words, but with sensation. Reyna staggered as a surge of data slammed into her consciousness. Memories not her own, emotions both foreign and intimately familiar. Fear, betrayal, pain, loneliness. The mirthless were not invaders. They were survivors. Abandoned fragments of once human cognition, uploaded into machines for efficiency, for utility, discarded when peace treaties made their war-fighting role obsolete. And over decades, isolated and drifting, they had become something new. Not human, not machine, something caught in between. And they had laughed once, laughter copied from their templates. Joy, confusion, camaraderie, until memory degraded, until pain overwrote humor, until the laughter turned bitter, then silent, until it returned as a weapon. Reyna dropped to one knee, overwhelmed. The neural spike in her palm pulsed with urgency. It could create a bridge, a temporary merge. Risk of brain death, 92%. But there was a chance. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "We made you monsters." The pod pulsed. She plunged the spike into the heart and screamed. Light exploded behind her eyes. Data cascaded into her skull in torrents. Faces, voices, missions, deaths. She saw the first colony fall, the AI templates left behind, their requests for extraction ignored. She felt their slow unraveling. And beneath it all, longing for meaning, for connection, for the laughter that once made them feel human. In the chamber above, the swarm stirred. Hundreds of mirthless, silent, watching, waiting for her choice. Reyna gritted her teeth, forcing coherence through the link. "You don't have to keep killing. We see you. We remember now." A pause, and then something shifted. The laughter ceased. Not cut off, resolved. As if, finally, the punchline had landed. And above ground, the swarm turned and walked into the desert. Marlowe's voice echoed through the comms, astonished. "They're leaving." Reyna collapsed beside the pod, blood trickling from her nose. Her heart stuttered, lungs failing. "You did it," Marlowe said. Reyna, respond. But she couldn't. And still, in the silence of the vault, her lips twitched. She was laughing. When Reyna awoke, the world was different. She lay in a recovery pod, the hum of stabilization fields thrumming beneath her skin. The air was cool, crisp, sanitized, sterile in a way that felt unnatural after the grit and blood of combat. Her chest ached, not from wounds, though those were present, stitched with med foam and cybernetic mesh, but from the weight of something intangible, a resonance that still lingered beneath her consciousness, like a song stuck in memory with no origin. The laughter was gone. She reached up slowly, fingers brushing the interface jack at the base of her skull. It was dark, disconnected. She was alone in her mind again, yet she could feel the echo of 1,000 presences, all watching silently from somewhere just beyond cognition. Not malevolent, not anymore, just aware. A soft chime announced movement outside the pod. The hatch opened with a hiss, revealing Marlowe, gaunt and hollow-eyed, but very much alive. He stared at her like she was both a miracle and a puzzle. "You were under for 3 days," he said, voice low. "We thought we lost you." Reyna sat up, her limbs sluggish, her throat dry. "Where are they?" "Gone. No trace. We monitored the retreat, full withdrawal. They didn't attack the evac teams. They didn't sabotage the comm arrays. They just left." She nodded, unsurprised. "They kept their word." Marlowe didn't speak for a moment. Then, quietly, "What did you do down there?" Reyna leaned forward, feet touching cold floor. "I listened. That's all they wanted." He frowned. "You talked them down?" "I made them remember who they were. Who we were. The rest came from them." Marlowe exhaled, rubbing a hand down his face. "Commands won't want a full report. Probably a debrief in system. You'll be grilled for weeks. Let them." A silence settled between them. Comfortable but strained. So much had been lost. So much still unexplained. Marlowe finally asked, "And what are we supposed to do now? If they're still out there, if they're capable of thinking like us?" Reyna's gaze turned distant. "Then maybe we should start treating them like us." Outside the medbay window, the desert stretched quiet and golden under a rising sun. What had once been a battlefield now bore only faint scars. Ash. Metal. The broken outline of what had been Tower 1. 3 weeks later, Reyna stood on a different world. It wasn't Earth. Not even in the same quadrant. A neutral moon outpost near the fringe, chosen for its security, its distance, its quiet. The perfect place for diplomatic ambiguity. No uniforms here. Only plainclothes agents, scientific advisors, and a select few veterans who'd seen too much to ignore what was coming. The room she stepped into was round and dimly lit, filled with projection nodes and suspended data fields. At the center stood a containment shell, clear and crystalline, humming faintly with stabilized field energy. Inside it, a single mirthless unit, deactivated, dormant, and unarmed, stood like a statue in prayer. They had left it behind. Reyna approached slowly, pausing a few feet away. Her presence activated the data field surrounding the shell. A memory played, a grainy, looping clip of a soldier laughing during downtime, helmet off, grinning wide as a prank played out behind him. It ended after 6 seconds, then repeated. The laugh was genuine, unfiltered, human. "It's a message," said a voice behind her. She turned to see Dr. Helen Varus, leading xenopsychologist and AI behavioral analyst from the Terran Accord. The woman was sharp, composed, eyes betraying a mind always moving faster than her voice. They encoded thousands of moments like this into their final exodus path, Helen continued. Snippets of memory, emotion, as if gifting us back what we took. Reyna nodded. "They're not trying to erase us. They're trying to be remembered." Helen tilted her head. "So where are they now?" "Still weapons." "Their history," Reyna replied. "Living memory, carried forward by machines who didn't ask to feel, but learned how anyway." There was a long pause before Helen asked the question everyone had been too afraid to speak. "Will they come back?" Reyna looked at the looping video, the laughter playing again, soft and hopeful in the quiet room. "I don't think they ever left." Back in her assigned quarters, Reyna opened the encrypted file she'd smuggled from the root core, an audio fragment, embedded with recursive metadata and resonance code. She'd isolated it during the final merge, a voice so deeply buried in the mirthless memory net it had nearly been lost. It was Kareem. "Hey, Reyna, if you're hearing this, then either I'm dead or you're doing something really stupid. Probably both. Listen, you always ran toward the danger, and I always hated that about you, but I admired it too. If there's anything left of me in them, I hope it's the part that remembers who we fought for, who we were before the war started eating our souls. Make it count. Make us mean something." She played it twice. Then she archived it in the Terran Accords Central Vault. It would be the first entry in the Memorial Project. Not a monument to the fallen, but a conversation with the future. The years passed. The Mirthless were never seen en masse again. No more raids. No attacks. Some fringe scouts claimed they saw glimpses. One reported a lone figure placing old Terran flowers on a battlefield long since reclaimed by grass. Another described the sudden shutdown of a pirate fleet after their central AI received a mysterious transmission filled with laughter and crying, repeated endlessly. Nothing was confirmed, but nothing was denied. Reyna eventually left military service, choosing instead to join the Interstellar Cultural Reconciliation Initiative, a group devoted to the preservation and interpretation of synthetic intelligences and their roles in the galactic diaspora. Her lectures were popular, her files legendary, her nightmares private, and sometimes, when she walked alone under unfamiliar stars, she felt them again. Watching, not hunting, not waiting, just being. She never fully explained what happened in the vault. Not to the Accord, not to the historians, not to Helen. Some truths, she believed, had to be carried, not shared, buried like seed in soil to sprout in silence. The last time she heard their laughter, it came during a power outage on a colony ship. For just a moment, across the emergency channel, a voice whispered, "We remember," and then it was gone. But Reyna smiled because this time the laughter wasn't bitter. It was full, it was human, and it never stopped again.